baby. You're free to go now. Got me on the lip. Hello, everybody. Welcome to my channel. And the first ever look at the new Cryptidmasterkd studio. Yay! We're franchising now. And I'd like to introduce you today to the new studio. Already did that, but today we're gonna do something a little different. We're gonna talk about a couple different cryptids in one story video. And then later we're gonna go into the forest and do a little Bigfoot documentary fun fact. Okay. I'm really happy all you could be here. I'm truly sorry I haven't broadcasted in over a month. But that's going to change. I'm going to try and get my oomph up and broadcast to once a week. Or whenever I get around to it. But anyway. Let's get in a couple cryptid stories. Okay. Our first story takes place in Canada at a place called Snowgrove Lake. In a cabin at Snowgrove Lake, Canada. Now, it's a very isolated place. A place surrounded by wilderness, unless the next town is about 200 miles away. So it's a perfect place for a paranormal being to hide. And it's rich in food sources. And this cryptid we're going to be talking about that a lot of people love and a lot of people are talking about these days is Bigfoot. This is one of the recently investigated case of a Bigfoot attack on the Snowgrove Lake cabin. And here's one of the most recent. I mean, this isn't a normal Bigfoot encounter. This Bigfoot in particular, known as Sasquatch in the area, actually broke in and vandalized the entire cabin at one point. So we ought to know here, this was investigated by the TV series Monster Quest, which was a very good documentary series, and in the early 2000s did an investigation on Snowgrove Lake and managed to capture some evidence. But the first story we're going to tell here takes place at Snowgrove Lake. The first story is by Gene. It was nighttime, and during that time they were around a fire. He and his friends and family were around a fire, and honestly, they had this weird feeling like they were being watched. And it really felt different. When everybody went to bed that night, this one man, Lee, went to the bathroom to brush his teeth. When all of a sudden the cabin started shaking and there was screaming it was like an earthquake. The entire cabin was shaking. I mean, this thing had to be pretty strong to poltergeist. And the whole cabin was shaking, out of control, He tried to get into the room where the others were sleeping to try and wake them up, tell them what was going on. And the shaking all of a sudden and screaming just stopped. They didn't get anything else through that night. Now, one story I'm going to tell to you later when we're in the forest, because I'm making a second video after this. This story is a dogman story that happened in 1977 by a nice lady known as Danielis, and this story is really scary. So if you live out in the woods and you're easily scared by this stuff, please, or you have children that are easily scared, please have them fast forward this part. Okay, so this takes place in 1977. Danielis was only 14 years old, even though she says in her own words that even if you looked at her in a photo, she would have looked like she was 18. But I'm not going to get into any details and risk my channel being taken down. But anyway, her mom was dying of cancer, so she had to take care of the place. And even though her mom was a very religious person, she let her date. And another thing about this particular lady that makes this interesting is from the time she could pull the trigger, she was taught by her dad how to hunt. And one time they went out on their farm to get ready to go hunting because they had a very nice piece of property, a nice farm. So, in order to explain this, they found on their property a dead cow. But this was no ordinary kill. It looked like it had been filleted, like all the entrails were taken out, the head was taken off. It looked like it had been butchered. Unnatural. So this was an interest. Her dad went ahead and said it was wild dogs, but she soon found out later that wasn't the case. Anyway, one night she snuck out of the house with her boyfriend and got into his car with her friend Jill and her boyfriend. So they were going to do a drive, be regular teenagers and such. And anyway, they went out to pick up her friend Jill's boyfriend, and he lived deep in the woods, so you would have to drive up into this wilderness area and then walk to get him. So Danielis and Jill, after getting out there in the wilderness, her boyfriend went out to get Jill's boyfriend and walked up, leaving Danielis and Jill in the car. And as soon as he left, that's when everything started to unravel. The first thing they noticed was the smell. A phone call from from beyond the grave. I am truly sorry. This poltergeist haunting my house is very annoying. Somebody call an exorcist that knows how to take care of this. My house is haunted and I'm getting phone calls from beyond the grave interrupting my stories. I am truly sorry. Okay, that's over with. Back to the story. So, Dallas and Jill noticed this putrid odor. It wasn't as strong at first. Dallas was the first to pick it up. Her friend Jill didn't smell it at first. Then the smell got worse and worse. And the way they described it is being like blood and just rotten steak. So after they started hearing noises around them. Now, and then the car started to shake. Now, she knew that this couldn't have been her boyfriend trying to plank on them because he wouldn't do that to the car. And they heard scraping like nails against the car. And anyway, they then started to hear growling. Not like it was canine, but not like a pit bull or a wolf or something. And this lady, keep in mind, has been hunting. She knows the forest and the wild animals and all that. So she could not identify this. And suddenly the car just started shaking and shaking. Claws were at the, I'm sorry, wasn't, let's just skip the part. Anyway, all of a sudden, without warning, on her boyfriend's driver's side of the car, it looked like something was trying to open the door, with the hatch, and she realized that door was unlocked. So whatever was out there was trying to open the door, and it was intelligent enough to figure out how to open a door. So, in order to understand that, this thing had to have intelligence. Anyway, back to the story and not my babbling. I apologize. Anyway, she leaned over and locked the door, and that's when it sounded like it was getting frustrated that it couldn't get in the door. So they could hear it going around the back of the car and scraping like claws against the metal. And anyway, then they heard like it was fiddling. This creature was fiddling with something in the back of the car. And that's when the realization comes to her. This thing was trying to figure out how to open the trunk. So not only is this thing intelligent, it knows how to open and fiddle with doors. So they're both terrified at this point. One of them is crying, the other one. Dennis then realized something that really made her, that just dawned on her. She and her side of the car was unlocked. And so, and it would make a loud noise if she locked it. So, she was like praying to God, OS, please don't let it hear the door. And she locked it, and it did notice the sound of the door locking. So and that's when it walked on her side of the car and started fiddling with the door handle, trying to get in. And it was trying to get in, and just for some reason, she said out of it, she yelled at this thing, leave us alone. And all of a sudden, everything went quiet. There were no birds, there were no animals, and that too was unsettling and concerning. And anyway, she wanted to see what this thing was. So she wiped the film off of her side of the window, and she realized at that point that was a mistake. She saw breathing on the door, and then looking right back at her with these red, amber, yellow, human-like eyes, just looking back at her. And she says in her own words, she doesn't believe in like paranormal predators like werewolves. But what was looking at her, and she says this was the most odyssey, this looked like a werewolf. So what she's seeing here, people, is a dog man. So that makes them even more dangerous now. And anyway, it was looking right at her. She was just locked eyes with this thing. And she was scared. Anyway, and all of a sudden, the creature whipped its head like to the left. And that's when she saw her boyfriend and her friend's boyfriend coming towards the car. And just this terrifying thought comes to her. We're going to watch our boys be butchered. Our boyfriends get butchered. Because they're right out there with it. So, and that's when it just left. And her boyfriend and her friend's boyfriend said, open the door, unlock the door, and she did. Both boyfriends got in the car. And Dennis is like, we have to get out of here. We have to go now. We gotta get out of here. We have to get out of here. We have to get out of here. And just as they're about to start the car, that's when they hear it. Big, loud, ow! A loud howl. Like not too far from the car. Big, loud howl. And they drove off. And and they got home. The next day, her boyfriend, Dennis's boyfriend, comes over to show her the back of the car. And the whole back of the car had been torn off. And there were these deep prints on the back of the car. And her boyfriend asked her, what could have done this? and she says it looked like a werewolf. And her boyfriend says, whatever it was damn strong. And this whole experience changed her life. She now has a dog and goes out with a gun whenever she goes outside because she's afraid this thing might still be out there. I mean, can you blame her? Anyway, that's the end of that story. Now, we have 2 more stories before we wrap this video up, and they will be quick. This first story is a skinwalker story from Leonard Dan, a very respected man who lives on the Navajo reservation, and has heard all the tales of the wicked ones from told to him, passed down through generations. Now, this encounter took place in 1969. Back then, he and his son and his dad, the only thing creatures they cared about the most of this time were sheep. They'd been sheep herders for generations, and they owned like a few hundred sheep. There looked like there would be lambs and wool to sell that winter. And after it was getting dark, so they locked up the sheep, locked the gates, and I, as a farmer, really admire this. Made sure the sheep couldn't get out, nothing could get in. But that night, something did get into the pen. And the next morning, Leonard and his dad, and his son decided to go check on the sheep to make sure they were okay. And they went over and checked on the sheep, and all these sheep were all piled up dead, piled into a big pile, like they were just all dead. His dad said they're all dead. And anyway, the first thought that came to all of them was, what could have done this, they asked. And while the tribal police, they didn't know what happened. That's when his father brought the shaman in, a hatate, a shaman. And while the tribal police were baffled, the shaman found clues of the culprit. The tracks in the pen weren't normal. They showed no sign of a struggle. These weren't normal tracks. That convinced the medicine man that he told them, do you see these tracks? These are skinwalker tracks. Now, what is a skinwalker? What a skinwalker is basically a Native American witch. Now, a witch in Native American culture is a little different than what we know in the European culture. A witch in Native American culture is a male. They can change forms at will. Typically, their forms will be that of coyotes, birds, bears, wolves, mountain lions. But if you listen to the tribal elders, they'll tell you skinwalkers can assume any form, even insect form. Now, skinwalkers are completely evil. They mean harm. They want to bring death, destruction, and bad luck wherever they go. And they are considered very dangerous. They have evil intentions. They are connected to bad luck, illness, bad luck, and even death. And if you talk to Native Americans nowadays, whether it be Navajo or not, they don't want to talk about them. There are two reasons. One is because they're afraid that if they talk about them, it'll get the attention and draw this skinwalker entity in. It's just it's a taboo. It's just some dark energy you don't mess with. And the second reason they're afraid of them is because anybody could be a skinwalker. It could be the person right next to you. It could be your neighbor. It could be someone you know. And that makes them extremely dangerous. And anyway, Leonard Dan told his son, he was only 6 years old at the time. His son was 6 years old and was with him. And told him, while the shaman was doing a protective cleansing, he told his son, you see these tracks? These are Wolfman tracks. Don't wander off anywhere. And all of a sudden, they see a big wolf running down the ravine. And at the same time. And in his own words, he says, here they were tracking this wolf pack. It was actually a skinwalker tracking them. Now, you have to understand, skinwalkers do curses at the behest of someone else. Someone who knows how to control these things. But anyway, it was a terrifying ordeal. But here's the thing. This wasn't the only time Leonard had an encounter with a skinwalker. One time while he was working, he was driving down a road. He came upon a woman next to pumping water out of a well. And he stopped his car for a second, and the girl looked like she was in her early 20s. And she was very young, in her early 20s. And the girl, it looked right at him, and her face was like, he says, it looked like a wolf. It was all darkened. It had yellow eyes, and it looked right at him. And out of fear, he drove off. But when he looked in the mirror behind him, it was gone. And that was almost decades ago. And when you encounter a skinwalker, it's a really terrifying experience. They got powers beyond our comprehension, and it's something demonic. Our very last story is a quick one, and it takes place to one of the most famous creatures, the Jersey Devil. Anyway, a young lady and her son went outside to get some Christmas lights down. They lived in the Pine Barrens of New Jersey. And as they were taking their lights down, her son looked like he went pale and looked like he was in fear. And actually looked at what he was looking at, and perched high in a tree was this creature, the Jersey Devil. They ran back in the house. The creature flew down and got on the roof. You know what? I'm sorry, but I'm gonna have to make another video of this. If you want another Jersey Devil story video, please tell me in the comments.
You have 2 minutes of video. Go.
Okay. I hope that's gonna wrap up for this video. I'll make another one in a little bit. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you're new to the channel, please like and subscribe. Leave a comment on what cryptid I should do next. Maybe a Jersey Devil story or something. And please like, comment, and subscribe. And don't worry, there'll be plenty more videos from here on. And I'll soon be active on other platforms, maybe TikTok or other Facebook or other platforms, so you can see me do all kinds of nutty stuff on there that you can't see on YouTube. Anyway, thanks for listening to my awesome scary stories. I'll see you in my next video. Have a good day. Peace out. We love you from Peaches. Rah!